Hey guys, welcome to my Samoan language instruction on negative verbals. Some of the content in this video is going to be a review, and then most of it is going to be additional ways that you can negate your verbs. Okay, so as you have already learned, most verbal sentences in Samoan can be negated by placing the adverb not before the sentence. Okay, so Margaret does not like you would be like such. E lei fia makerita ya te oi. I didn't read that book would be sa o le faitauina lena tusi. They don't understand would be o lo olato le malamalama, and there aren't any books in the house. E leaini tusi ilifale. So the first three examples should just be review. This last one, however, it's a little bit of a different usage of what you've been used to. Okay, so if I wanted to say something like there aren't any, I would usually say something like this. I would say, e leai ni tusi ilifale. But they have contracted that lei, this right here, they've contracted it to be lei. So sometimes they'll contract lei just to lei. And lei means no. And so this kind of makes sense if I think about this sentence, no some books in the house. Okay, so that It sounds like bad grammar in English, but they contract this a lot. There aren't any, could just be like no some books in the house. Okay, so I know that sounds a little bit funny, but it happens. They slur that, or they contract a lei a lei to lei. Okay, so this portion right here, this happens a lot. Okay, and I'm going to try to explain it, but a lot of times you can use them interchangeably. If you're confused on when to use which one, I would just use this one right here. And once you start to kind of get a little bit more comfortable, then you can start contracting things to be to lei. Okay? But I don't want you to worry too much about this concept because they are used interchangeably. Just when you know that you see lei in a kind of a different situation or usage, just know that they probably contracted it from lei. Okay, so here's some examples. So what I've been taught, and to be honest, I don't know if this is completely true or not. What I've been taught is most of the time when you ask questions, you use the ei concept. Okay, and when you answer them and you want to negate the answer, then you use this more often. And when you want to make independent statements, then you use lei. That could be true, but looking back on my experience in Samoa, I think I saw both cases interchangeably very often. So I'm just going to kind of do it the way that I heard. When you use questions, you use this ei and lei, and when you use just a independent statement, then you contract it to lei. Okay. So are there any people on the moon? The way that you could say that in Samoan would be Pe iai ni tangata ile masina. Okay, and just quick review. This ei right here, this ei, that means possess or is there or exists. Okay, that's what that means. And then when I put the lei right there, I'm negating does not exist or there isn't any or something to that effect. And so when I say no, there aren't any people on the moon, it would sound a lot like this. It would sound leai e lei ni tangata ile masina. So again, this is kind of, these two examples I said are kind of going on the rule that I've heard that you use ei and lei when you're using questions and answering those questions. And then this example, lei, is going to be used in an independent statement where you see something like, there aren't any girls in the room, okay? And in Samoan, that would sound like e leai ni tene ile poto. So no, some girls in the room. But I honestly think you could also see this form of it too. So I could probably replace this lei with lei right there. So instead of e lei, I could say e lei ni tene ile poto. And I could see it both ways. So just, it's not super crucial, but I just want you to know that when you come across it, that they both mean the same way. That's part of the reason why we're going over this now, is I want you to know that, okay, when I see lei, sometimes that means lei as well. And they have very similar meaning. This lei is like does not exist or is not there, and this just means no. So they're very similar anyways, and so you can use them interchangeably sometimes, okay? So in the present tense, when a lei or te lei, so a lei or te lei with descriptive pronouns is prefixed to o, namely olo'o. So if I'm using the tense marker olo'o, and I want to use olo'o and then a lei or te lei with it, that turns into a leo a lot of the times, okay? So you've seen a leo, and basically when I told you to negate things before, I said lei is with verbs, okay, and then leo for space, I'm going to say here, is with nouns. That's when you normally see the negating thing. When you see leo, it's usually with nouns because I'm putting I'm putting this in front of a noun phrase, and my noun phrase usually has a particle o in it, and so it just switches to leo. But there's also cases when you're going to see leo with verbs, and this is some examples of that. So I don't want you to just think, okay, well, he taught me a false rule. No, that's the general rule, and there's always going to be exceptions to that, and this is kind of the exception to that rule. So when I want to use a lei or te lei, these things with olo'o, or the particle o, but normally olo'o, then it turns into a leo. So there's going to be an affirmative on the left side and a negative on the right side. So if I wanted to say Jim is going to New Zealand, I could say something like olo'o alu simi I New Zealand, and the negative of that would be e leo alu simi I New Zealand. Can you see I have an olo'o right here? I have an olo'o, and then let's say, basically what I'm trying to say is olo'o le alu simi, and then basically this exception, if you will, I'm using a lei right here. I'm using a lei, and I'm using the tense marker olo'o. This thing right here just contracts to that whole thing, I guess. This whole thing right here contracts to e leo alu. This thing turns into the thing that I just wrote out. So the thing that's in blue gets turned into this right here, okay? So this is one way that you'll see leo in front of verbs. So most of the time you'll just see lei, and but just so you know, you will see leo sometimes in front of verbs, and that just means that you're negating the action, okay? So here's another example. So this is kind of one of those olo'u o'u fia alu ile fale. I want to go home, and I'm basically saying that same thing, olo'u o te le fia alu ile fale, but then I switch it to o te leo fia alu ile fale. Okay? So basically I'm using, instead of the first time I was using a lei, this time I'm using te lei and o te leo fia alu ile fale. And that's one way you could say it. But to be completely honest, guys, you could see it this way. You could see it this way that I've highlighted, but you could also see it the way that we would normally do it. We could say o te lei fia alu, okay? And then I would just say the rest of the sentence, ... okay? So you could also see it that way, and there's nothing in my mind wrong with that sentence. I think it's completely right, but you will also come across sentences that have the highlighted portion or something similar to it, where you see a leo in front of the action, and you're like, well, hey, wait a minute, the teacher or the Samoan tutor on YouTube said that most of the time lei goes before verbs, and that's usually the case, but there also is times, and that's when I'm trying to use the tense marker olo'o or te lei and a lei, these things, sorry, if I'm trying to use these things with the particle o, then I can also use leo, okay? So that's one way. There's also another thing that we need to talk about when we're using the present tense and trying to negate things. So in most instances, olo'o lei is equivalent to a leo or te leo, okay? So for example, I can see this statement in Samoan, Mary is not sleeping in the house, and I could say it one of two ways. I could say olo'o lei moi mele ile fale, but more often than that, I'd probably see a leo moi mele ile fale. Okay, so just know that a leo or te leo is the same as olo'o lei. Okay, so awesome. So hopefully that's making sense. If not, I don't want you to worry too much about it. This is one of the lessons that's not quite as critical. The main purpose of this is so that when you come across these kinds of things, is you think, okay, he talked about this, that's what he was talking about in that video. This is one of the exceptions to the lay and the lay-o. So you will see lay-o in front of verbs sometimes to negate them, and this is why. And if you need to, at that point, come back and rewatch this video, and it'll probably make a little bit more sense to you after you've seen it a few times in front of verbs, and you can kind of use that structure and foundation that you've come across and use the rules again to kind of help solidify the rule. Okay, so now the past tense. This lei conveys the negative in the past tense. It can sometimes be translated as not yet. So if I wanted to say I haven't read the book yet, you would say o te lei whai tauina letusi. Okay, I have not yet read the book, basically is what that's saying. But although lei is normally paired with the habitual tense marker a or te, it can also be added to the past tense markers na and sa. So I could say this sentence 3 different ways. I didn't sleep last night. And I could say it o te le'i moi ana po. I could say sa o le moi ana po and sa o le'i moi ana po. And so there is a little bit difference between the two. So this one right here is I didn't sleep last night, and this I had not yet slept last night. But basically, I want you to know that what we've talked about this whole time, meaning differences among these forms are sufficiently slight to be irrelevant to the beginning student. So basically, what I'm saying is, if you're a beginner and you're just going through the course and trying to learn Samoan for the first time, then a lot of this is going to be a little bit beyond you, and that's okay. What I want you to do is to have watched this video and to let the video kind of sink in subconsciously. And then when you come across these kinds of examples, then you'll kind of have a better understanding of it. If you had not listened to this video, then it would be probably way over your head and you wouldn't know, and you'd probably be upset with me because you're like, hey, he said lay goes before verbs and lay-o goes before nouns. No, that's just normally, that's the general, but just like with English and any other language, there's always exceptions. And so basically what I want you to do is watch this video, let the things that we talked about sink subconsciously, and hopefully you're coming across someone, whether it's listening to it, talking, preferably both, and when you come in contact with this principle, then you'll realize, okay, that makes more sense, and if you need to, you can come back in the future. Okay, so here's some example sentences. I'm not going to go over them, but I just kind of wanted to show you a few more examples, and hopefully you can read these, and if you want, try to translate the English version into a Samoan version or vice versa, and that might help you a little bit more than just reading the two. Until next time, guys, tofa soifua.